Hi guys, today I'm here to do my May wrap up. I feel like for a few of these books I've already got like reviews out or coming out, so I will link those where necessary. But let's start off as usual with like the stats and stuff, to just throw out there what my reading like generally has been statistically. I have read 2 out of the 4 remaining seasonal TBR that I was doing. So the books that I have left on that TBR, which some of you may have already seen in my summer TBR video, is, oh bless you, my cat's just sneezed, Children of Blood and Bone and Transcription. So in terms of breakdown, I have read 1 book that was loaned, well it wasn't loaned, it was gifted, but I thought I'd include it as that anyway. 4 ARC/NetGalley, 4 ebooks, 5 physical books, and a total of 9 books in general. 2 of those were YA fantasy, 5 of them were children's/middle grade, and 1 of them I've put in other, but it was a classic. In terms of like where I'm at in terms of like my reading goals, particularly the one where I wanted to read a certain amount of Kindle books, specifically NetGalley. Last month I had 10 out of 20 read, and I read another 4 this month, so that gives me 14 out of 20. And if you want any more information on that, then check out my reading goals video. So starting off with the first book I finished during May, that was Cannonball, Howdee-haie and the Lion by Grace Easton. I gave this one a 3 stars, and it's one of the NetGalley books that I read. It is a short little illustrated story about a girl who kind of lives on her own in the jungle, and she can do all these really cool like tricks and that, but there's no one to kind of see it and appreciate it until she stumbles on what looks to be a circus coming through, and all these people she realises can do cool tricks like her, and she's like overwhelmed and excited by it, and the story kind of goes from there. So yeah, as I said, I gave this a 3 stars. I feel like it's a lovely message for children about being brave, confident, and just generally being yourself as an individual. I also feel like it could be quite a good fuel, quite a good driving mechanism for children to seek adventure, because it's so often now you see kids just sit in front of like electronic devices and they don't have like the desire to go out and climb trees and run around and be a kid anymore. So I feel like this might inspire, encourage that kind of almost primal instinct, you know. I also found the illustrations of this book to be really beautifully designed, and again eye-catching and engaging for specifically the target audience, which is a younger audience. So yeah, after that I read another NetGalley book, and this was World of Wonder Mountains by Charlotte Gullivan and Eleanor Taylor. I think Eleanor Taylor's the illustrator and Charlotte Gullivan is the author. And I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. So this one is like more of an educational book, another illustrated book as well. It's beautifully done so actually, and it is literally about all the different mountains around the world, kind of what they're about, how tall they are, you know, that sort of stuff. I thought that the mountain scenes were definitely very beautifully illustrated, and it kind of kept your eye lingering on the page. You wanted to stare at it longer to see what else you could absorb looking at it visually. It had some really great information, also including the surrounding flora and fauna within the environment of the mountain, so you could see what was kind of like thriving there naturally, which was really interesting, and again another piece of information that will educate children. And I really like that it gently introduces the conversation of the impact of climate change and humans' mistreatment of nature, so again hopefully it inspires change within the younger generations. After that I finished off my first physical book of the month, and that was The Burning Maze by Rick Riordan, and this is book 3 in the Trials of Apollo series, and I really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So the series generally, I feel like I did a reading vlog including this, but I can't really remember. If I have, I will link that video. I feel like I did a video, I'm not sure. But what the series is about is it's set in the Percy Jackson world, and we're following the god Apollo as he is thrust out of Olympus for doing something that's angered his father Zeus, and he falls into this body that he becomes this character called Lester, and he's basically obviously sent on dangerous quests to kind of regain his godly status, go back to Mount Olympus and also stop the world from being destroyed. Because why not just throw that in there? And these have been so fun to read. I love being back in the Percy Jackson world, and it's just, it makes me feel good inside, you know. Linking in actually to the book that I last talked about, the Mountains one, this kind of was similar in the fact that it subtly introduces conversations on how humans are harming the planet. And I did enjoy, you have these characters like druids and other elemental spirits, and how they're affected by certain things that happen in this book, and the way the conversation was carried, I feel was done very well. I don't even know how to get my thoughts across in that regard. The prophecy aspect of this was so clever. I really enjoyed it, and as usual there was always great characters that I enjoy reading about. I care about what happens to them, you know. In terms of what I didn't like so much, there was just some devastating tragedies that I was not waiting for, I was not ready for, didn't expect it, and it made me feel some kind of way. Going back to the ebooks again, I read Happily Ever After and Everything in Between by Debbie Tung, and I gave this one a 3 stars. It's just basically a collection of illustrations where the author / illustrator has kind of given you like relatable scenarios of a couple after they've been married. It's just one of those quick things to just flick through, probably like what people would use as a coffee table book sort of thing. So I found this, of course, really cute and relatable, but realistically, in terms of the other things I read and just the substance that I get from them, I found that it would, and it has been, kind of forgettable. Again, specifically against other graphic novels and comics that I've read, but in general, like other books, you know, it just, other things will stay with me more. Even now, talking about it, I can't really remember too much, other than it being relatable and cute, you know. Then I read My Sister Jody by Jacqueline Wilson, and this was actually a reread for me. I read this for the first time back in 2008 when I was reading Jacqueline Wilson books. That's like my age group, and I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. It's about 2 sisters, and one of them, Jody, is always getting into trouble at school. Pearl is kind of like, she so much admires her sister Jody. She loves her, adores her, copies her sometimes, but she is the golden child out of the 2. And Jody does stuff that makes them decide, like the parents decide, that they need to move, go to a boarding school, start afresh. Hopefully Jody will kind of buckle up her ideas and get her act together. And it's basically that. There's some really horrible things that happen in here. There's very realistic things that you see as, you know, growing up as a young girl, and it was a beautiful story. I have got a whole reading vlog on this, which I will link in the cards if you're interested. It is spoilery though, so bear that in mind, but if you don't want to watch spoilers, then just generally, amazing story. Definitely, I feel held the test of time. Because I was expecting what was happening, the shock factor, I guess, wasn't as high. It was still a very like emotive and enjoyable book to read. Very nostalgic as well, because I'd read that back in the day. Then I finally finished one book that I feel like I've been reading for months on end, and that is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. I feel like I'm emphasising the wrong letters in his surname, so I do apologise if I'm mispronouncing that. This, I feel like everyone knows what this is about. I gave it 5 stars. It's about basically a paedophile kind of recounting to you his story and love affair with young Dolores Hayes, who is a 12-year-old child. There is so much more to it than that, and I think if people just hear that, they usually get really turned off, which I understand, because who wants to read about that? But it's such an interesting character study, and there's so much in here. It's just, I can't even. I have got a full review on this, and I reviewed the 1997 film as well, so I did like a book versus movie kind of thing again. Now I'll link that in the cards if you're interested, because I feel like I get my thoughts across better than I could now. I believe the book review part of that, which is the first half of the video, is spoiler free, but once I start talking about the movie, that's when the spoilers come out. So if you haven't read or seen it or anything, keep that in mind. You can watch about halfway and pretty much have a full video, but if you want to discuss some more, hang around for the second half. But yeah, it's a interesting book to say the least. I'm glad I finally read it, but it is definitely a difficult, uncomfortable read. Then I finished off another NetGalley book, and it's one that I'd been dipping in and out of like over the month, and that was Who Do You Think You Are? 20 Psychological Tests to Explore Your Growing Mind by, it says Tom Adams, but it didn't say that on the book that I saw in NetGalley. It was, I cannot remember her name, but it's a different author. I'm really tired apparently. I gave this one a 3 stars out of 5. It's basically what the title says. It threw me back into like that nostalgic feel of a kids magazine where they had those quizzes to kind of guess what pop star you'd be, guess this. It had that sort of vibe, but obviously way more scientific with like a proper goal in mind, even though I assume it was simplified a little bit to get the idea across. Again, I do really enjoy that it was scientifically based, but I felt there was too many quizzes, like even for me. To be fair, my attention span is not the best, but even for me, who I can sit at something and work at it for a while, it was just, I lost interest. That's why it took me so long to like get through it. And I know it's not something you're supposed to be reading like cover to cover, but it's just, yeah, I don't know how kids can sit there and be in, unless you're really interested in that sort of thing. I don't feel like a lot of children or the target audience would sit there and go through the whole thing eventually, you know what I mean? And then going back to physical books, I read The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse by Charlie Macquarie, and this was so beautiful. I didn't really know what to expect going in, but I heard everyone basically raving about it and saying that it was such a lovely, heartwarming book, and it actually wasn't a story of what I was expecting it to be. It's pretty much like a collection of beautiful illustrations and quotes, like wise words, wise conversations between the boy, the mole, the fox and the horse, and it's just so, it almost brings you this restored faith in humanity reading this. It just made me feel light and happy and melancholy, and I ended up giving this a 5 out of 5 stars. Again, the wise words in this were so uplifting and comforting, especially at a time like now when everything's so uncertain and confusing and scary. This just kind of took me out of that moment, centered my mind, my being, my spirit, and made me feel good inside for a bit, you know. Absolutely adore the sketchy art style of this, of the illustrations. You get a glimpse of what it's like on the outside cover, and it basically carries through with a few variants of like block colours and like some different mediums added in there, but overall it keeps that kind of sketchy theme, and it's very beautiful. I feel like this would certainly be an excellent reread during tough times as now, because it made me feel like not so alone and like it's okay to feel, which is really lovely. But I will say that the flow of the writing is a bit hard to read. It's just very, very loopy, and for me, where it's so small, like I guess it's like calligraphy pen or something, but where it's so like thick in some areas, it was just difficult for me to work out what some letters were. But other than that, very beautiful. Nearing the end now, pretty much at the end, I read The Vine Witch by Luann G. Smith. This one I've got a review, I think it's going to be up shortly after this video. I just pulled a really awkward face, I'm aware. But yeah, this is something I really enjoyed, and I didn't really have much thought about it going in. It was kind of a spontaneous read because this is the one that was given to me by a friend, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. So this one is about this witch called Eleanor, and she's been cursed for 7 years, and you follow her at the beginning basically shedding off this curse at long last and going to revenge to find out what happened to her. So in this sort of area, witches are kind of, they've honed their skills into the art of winemaking, and that's why we've got the title The Vine Witch. So she's going back to her old home to kind of basically just reclaim it and continue what she was doing, as well as seeking revenge, to find that it's been taken over by a complete stranger who doesn't even believe in the local superstitions and is very much more of a science-based man. And so she is having to kind of gain his confidence in that, try to get control back over this, find out what happened to her, why, and that. But yeah, if you want to know more about my thoughts on this, then check out the video in the cards for when that goes up. And then lastly, I won't talk too much about this at all, but I've literally just today, it is the 1st of June, just finished Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. So I'll probably briefly mention this again in the June wrap up, but I do have a reading vlog coming out soon for this. I just wanted to let you guys know to stay tuned for that. So that is all for the books that I've read. Still quite a decent number. I think it's dropped a little bit, but probably because I was like getting through this bulky one. But I'm still very happy with the quality and content that I've read over the last month. So let me know what you have been reading, what you hope to read during June, and I'll speak to you in another video soon.